Hey guys, welcome to another video on Budget with a July Dreamer. So for today's video, I thought I'd share with you the importance of having an emergency fund. And this has been brought to you courtesy of my boiler breaking down. I believe back in May or the June budget, where I recapped about May, I talked about how much I had to spend when it comes to my house. I had to dip into my emergency fund because my boiler broken down, and a few things have happened since that has made me then dip further into my emergency fund. And I thought today is the day where I just share with you the importance of having an emergency fund and why I have personally benefited from having one. So everybody, I'm sure, knows what an emergency fund is, but if you don't, an emergency fund is a pot of money that you set aside for rainy days, emergencies. So you have to be very careful about defining what your emergencies are. For me as a homeowner, my emergencies include my boiler breaking down, my roof needing fixing, my fencing needing fixing, radiators, all of those things. For me, I class them as emergency, as well as my car breaking down. Touch wood, it doesn't, but those are emergencies. But for the car, even though I would touch my emergency fund for that, I normally have a separate pot, a sinking fund, where I save up for the car. But mostly for me, when it comes to emergencies, it could be personal emergencies, say being stranded abroad and stuff like that. But again, that's something I have a travel fund for. But in any case, this is just some of the examples that I can think of. Personally, I try to use my emergency fund for mostly my main home's emergencies that I might encounter. So like I say, back in May, I did have a home emergency because my boiler broke down and it was literally raining water. Like there was water coming from everywhere. It was such a mess. So I called my insurance because I do have home insurance, but your girl forgot to get the boiler serviced within 15 months, and that's the cover that my insurance has. If you haven't serviced it in 15 months, you're not covered. So I wasn't covered. Literally, I missed it by a month. Like, how silly is that? But in any case, because I couldn't rely on my insurance, I ended up having to call out a service just to call them out to come and see. The problem was a whole £75 just to call them out. Then when they came, they had to look at what exactly was wrong, did it need parts, and then fixing. That whole thing came to almost £400. So I spent over £500 just for my boiler. I know I would have spent at least £200 to £300 if I had used my insurance, because I do have an excess of £250 or thereabouts with my insurance. But in this case, I did not have my insurance to fall back on. I only had myself, and thankfully I had my emergency fund. Now fast forward to July. Actually, June didn't have much, but come July, I'm getting my bathroom renovated. I have a pot of money separate for that. When they are looking at the roof tiles and see that I have cracked tiles on my roof. In the UK, it rains like there's no tomorrow. So this is not something that I could leave hanging for a while whilst I try to figure out how to, maybe get paid or maybe save up some money in some other way. I couldn't afford to do that. I needed to get the roof fixed ASAP. And again, this one is one where I could have gone to the insurance, but I chose not to because I figured I'll just use my emergency fund. Again, I'm glad I have my emergency fund. So I was able to use my emergency fund to get my roof fixed. Now, because you know how these things all happen, the guys who are renovating my house also find out that my boilers are dry, like bone dry. Like, how does that happen? Then my heating starts to play off. Like, child, how many things can go wrong? But touch wood, that's the end of it. So these things have all brought certain level of stress, but none of it is financial stress because I do have an emergency fund to fall back on. I have also this complex, which I was talking about with a friend of mine yesterday, in that I dislike spending money from my emergency fund. even from my savings, to be honest. I have this big dislike for spending money from my savings and my emergency fund more so than any other funds that I have, purely because I just feel like I always need to have that money, which is true. I always need to, because you never know when something might come up. But I always feel like I need to have that beefed up money and never touch that money at all, which is, I know, is crazy, but I just have that kind of a complex. And my friend was reminding me something her partner reminded her of, is the reason why we save is for when these, these things happen, like boiler breaking down, the roof needing fixing up, all of that jazz. The reason we save is so that we can pay for them, we can have the money readily available to pay for these things when the unfortunateness does happen. So this is why I love having an emergency fund. And yes, I'm still feeling some type of way about it, because I still want to beef that back up. And personally, I have always said I want to have an emergency fund of between 3 to 6 months, the expenses covered. That has always been my preferred amount. And for me, for about 6 months, to continue living the kind of life that I live, should, for example, I lose my job or something like that, I would like to comfortably have £10,000 saved. This year, I have changed up my mind, where I wanted 5,000 of that to be in a low-cost index fund, and then 5,000 of that to be in one of my high-yield savings account. It's just that in the UK, we didn't have a lot of, we still don't, I want to say, a lot of savings accounts that gave you good interest, because the majority of them, I think of late, the majority of the high yield interest accounts, savings accounts, I think the highest I've seen was 5.36% interest that you earned on your money, whereas inflation is still between 7 to 10%. So you're still losing out in some way, shape, or form. So this is why I wanted half of it to be in an index fund and half of it easily accessible. This brings me nicely to where you should keep your emergency fund. I am doing what makes sense for me, but I'm not saying you should do the same. Never ever invest your emergency fund. Maybe a portion, but this is not advice. Never invest your emergency fund. Always have it in an easily accessible account. If an emergency was to happen today, you can easily go into that account, withdraw that money, and pay for that emergency. That's the type of account you need. Definitely don't recommend keeping it in your current account. I know a few people that do that. Personally, I do not. I like keeping it in a separate account, out of my spending account, out of the bills account, out of the account that my salary is paid into. I don't like having it there. I like it in a savings account, where even though I've complained about the measly interest, it's earning something in those savings accounts. So always keep your savings, your emergency funds, at least easily accessible. Maybe not with the same bank that you bank with, maybe with a different bank, because some of us, the temptation is way high that it will, we would easily touch that money. But this is why I was saying before, it is important that you define what an emergency is to you. Needing your nails done is not an emergency personally, but I don't know your life. So that could be an emergency for you, but personally, I don't think so. This is why for me, my emergency fund is for mostly my home and possibly my car. Then for my sinking funds, I save for things like self-care, I save for travel, I save for my car insurance, for my car tax, all of this good jazz. I try and have sinking funds for those things instead. So yeah, that is all the rambling that I wanted to share with you guys about the importance of having an emergency fund and how it has saved my behind over the last 3 months, because I feel like I'm drawing from my emergency fund every single month due to my home. This is year 3 of me owning my home, so maybe it's about time. But in any case, thank you so much for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!